Hello, I'm State Representative Jim Buchy from the 84th House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm Brad Miller, and I'm joined today by State Representative Jim Buchy, who serves the 84th House District, which includes all of Mercer County and parts of Auglaize, Darke, and Shelby counties. Representative, we're back in the saddle for another year.
Here we go again. Hello, 2016.
That's right. We'll touch on a number of topics today. We're going to start with at some point in the show, we're going to talk about some of the couple New Year's resolutions that you have. We'll get to that in a moment. We'll start by talking about blackout beer. You have acknowledged the growing craft beer industry in Ohio and some of the economic benefits that has had, but you've also expressed some concerns about some higher alcohol by volume products out there. Can you share some of those concerns?
Well, there's no question that from an economical standpoint, the growth of the craft beer industry in Ohio has just mushroomed. And we want to encourage the growth of that industry, and we've made it easier for the industry to grow. But now there is a demand for higher alcohol by volume craft beers and other drinks. And so I'm very concerned about that because of the rapid way that people can get intoxicated by drinking higher alcohol by volume in the product.
Can you explain some either recent law changes or maybe some things that are coming down the pike that might impact this?
Well, we have passed a recent law which maintains the integrity of the three-tiered distribution system in the state, which helps the larger craft breweries have an opportunity to sell their product away from the brewery. We also have made it such that it's easier for them to buy the permits and perform under the regulation so that they're given encouragement to grow their industries.
So from your perspective, is this sort of a balance between encouraging choice in the free market system while also protecting consumers from potentially dangerous products?
Yes, there's no question about it, Brad, because what we have here is we've got legislation before us that would at some point almost double the amount of alcohol by volume, and that's what concerns me, is that we have an opportunity to get intoxicated faster because of the increased alcohol. And for example, it's called blackout beer, where the alcohol the content is so high that just one of those will make you intoxicated, and we don't need more ways for trouble to occur on highways and with people and so on. So it's part of my New Year's resolution to eliminate easy access to drugs and alcoholic substances that are ruinous to you.
So you touched on that, another substance that has really dominated headlines in recent months in the latter half of 2015. On November 3rd, Ohioans soundly rejected a ballot measure that would have legalized marijuana in the state. Obviously, there were some other factors in that as well about potentially creating a marijuana monopoly, so there were other things at play as well. There does appear to be some support in the state for medical marijuana. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, just so you understand, I'm opposed to legalization of any smokable marijuana. There's no question that this just dovetails into the societal problems we have with drugs and alcohol. And so, it's being sold to the citizenry as a way to legalize the medical aspect of marijuana, which helps people, particularly with seizures and so on, in children and so on. However, the scientists are researching that product, that extraction from marijuana, and they've come up with an oil that is derived from the cannabis, and it is not smokable, and it treats the illnesses that we're wanting to treat because of the qualities of the medical aspect of the marijuana. So That's being researched right now, and I'm objective about pursuing that, because you can't smoke this and get a high on it, and it's there for the real medical positives of the marijuana. But I am not supportive of any kind of legalization of smokable marijuana.
How does this issue in particular sort of interact with what the General Assembly has been working on the past 5-6 years to try to curb some of the drug epidemic going on throughout the state? Can they work together, or how does this interact with that?
Well, yes, they all work together, because we've heard in so many medical circles that marijuana is the gateway drug to heroin. So you've got two really bad situations here, and so we want to do everything, and we're working on all ways possible to reduce the demand for marijuana and heroin. So yes, we've been working on various ways that we can work together as an assembly with the medical community as to how we can reduce that.
And that, again, goes back to the New Year's resolution that you mentioned.
It goes back to my New Year's resolution: stop the easy access to drugs and the highly intoxicating substances. We've got to get rid of them.
We'll move on to another course of subjects here. You were very active last year in the passage and sponsoring of House Bill 7, which provided safe harbor to students in the process of park testing. Can you first give us some background on that bill and why that was so important?
Well, it was so important because previously the Department of Education had given the school administrators, the schools, and the teachers relief from any negative results of initiating the park tests. And everybody knew when the park tests came on for the first time last year that their test scores were going to be less, and there could be some repercussions to the students. So House Bill 7, which I sponsored, made sure that the students were not held liable for the results of that park test.
So where does the state go from here? Since that has been passed, what happens next?
Well, what's happening? Well, of course, the idea is for us to develop a better, our own education plan in Ohio. There's no reason that we can't be the #1 state in public education in the country. We've got the best education minds here, and particularly in West Central Ohio. If the powers that be would come over in West Central Ohio and put together a program like we have, I'll guarantee you we go to the top and faster. So that's what we're doing, is trying to get the best education minds together to develop a program, develop our education, which is going to be superior.
Excuse me. Another aspect of this is the impact it's had on school report cards. I think you've touched on that in the past. Can you talk about that side of it?
Well, yes. We have a situation that's developed, and this is one of the things that just underscores the fact that the park test and Common Core is not good. What's happened is that you're going to see report cards coming out which are going to show high-performing schools on the performance index, which is the criteria the Department of Education uses to rate how well the kids are learning in the school. And I've got some of the highest performing districts in Ohio in the 84th House District. But when this new report card comes out, you're going to see as much as a 40-point drop in those test scores. And the reason is, when the children opted out of taking those tests, everybody knew they were bad. Parents had their kids not take the test, and so if they don't take the test, they got a 0, and that's being factored in on the report card. So I'm co-sponsoring legislation that will make the department come out with a separate report card by taking all those zeros out, so that it doesn't skewer the real education that's going on.
So basically that legislation would make the landscape more realistic in its outcomes.
And it wouldn't penalize the children. Don't forget, these new lower report cards are penalizing the kids.
Right. We have a few minutes left. We'll close with this subject. Kind of a complicated issue, but certainly one that's very important, and that is unemployment compensation reform, which is something going through the General Assembly at this time. Can you talk first about Ohio's financial landscape as it pertains to unemployment compensation benefits and sort of how we got to this point?
Sure. Well, several years ago, we currently have rates that employers pay to cover when employees are laid off because of slow business. And what happened during the recession several years ago, the unemployment really was high, and the demands for the money in the unemployment system were higher than the money was available. So Ohio had to borrow money from the federal government to keep up with its obligations to those who were on unemployment and deserving of benefits. So now that under the leadership of Governor Kasich and the House and the Senate, of course, our employment is much lower. The number of jobs, particularly in the private sector, have gone up over 350,000, and so the demands for unemployment compensation have lowered dramatically because people are working. However, because of the debt that we have due to the recession, employers are paying a higher rate for unemployment compensation to pay that back. So what we need to do two things to get back in line. We need to, one, build up the reserves again, so that in the future, if we have some bad times, we'll have some safe money in the back to help cover those expenses. And at the same time, we need to structure the benefit part of the package so that we can still have the integrity of the system while not having to have higher rates and maybe even lower rates for employers.
So this is still fairly early in the process, still a long way to go with this legislation, but is it basically because of increased employment, or decreased unemployment, I guess would be a better way of putting it, this is a good time for the state to start tackling this?
There's no question about it, because we are methodically we're methodically paying back the debt that we owe the federal government. So now we have to plan ahead so that we don't get into this situation in the future.
We have just a couple minutes left. We always close the program with you telling your constituents back in the 84th District how they can reach you here in Columbus.
Well, of course, our phone number is 614-466-6344. And then email is rep84@ohiohouse.gov. And then we hope that you'll take the survey again this month. And the way you do that is tinyurl.com/Buchy January 2016.
And that information is also located on the screen. Representative, welcome to the year 2016.
Happy New Year, Brad.
Great to have you back on the show for another year. And we look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. Thanks for watching.